want to show you, Greg. So you got 25 people online. You've got your attendees in person, and people are trickling in as they continue to walk up. So we're going to get things kicked off. So I'm going to first start with a few slides just about the Slack community, introduce who we are, and then we'll get moving into our presentation. So yeah, Sarah, thank you. That was just appreciate it. All right, let me share my screen. And you can all see my screen, correct? Yes, including online, I hope. Right.
I can see it.
Great, let's get it going. So it's March 13th. Welcome to another live in-person Slack community event. Thank you all for coming online and in person. New York is always tough to throw real live events because everyone's coming in from all over, and you never can get a real space. So thank you all for coming. Enjoy the food, eat as much as you can. I just want to quickly introduce the Slack community New York City chapter. Is this your first time? Who's first time here? Love to see that. Matt's a regular, and we always get Matt through. He loves to come through, but I'm excited to bring more people into the mix. So I am Zach Hottop. I'm one of the community leaders for Slack. We've got Sarah Dillon, also one of the New York City community leaders. We are now the largest chapter in the world, over 1,500 members. I know hopefully everyone's clapping online, really exciting stuff. But we're trying to throw as many events as possible to bring people together on events that are really interesting to them. So if you have ideas, if you want to figure out new ways to explore Slack, I would love to hear them, and we'd love to be able to present kind of that information to you. And so really big thank you to Greg for coming through. We'll talk a lot about partnership engineering today. But first I want to cover how to actually join the Slack community. Many of you have actually, kind of joined the community, right? You've signed up for the event, you're now in the email list, but we also have a massive Slack workspace dedicated to the community here. So I highly recommend joining the Slack community by going in your email. You find the order you did for this event. In that order, there will be a button that says join us in Slack. Go through that process. Join the Slack workspace, and in that channel, you'll see hashtag members NYC. I love to post in there first before I post anywhere. So if you want the latest and greatest about what's going on in the New York City community, that is the spot to be. So just a quick little intro about me, and then we'll get more into Greg. So my name is Zach Hottop. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called TightKnit. This is going to be a little confusing, but we help build Slack communities for B2B SaaS businesses. So we actually provide events, gamification, and onboarding, all for businesses that run their communities inside of Slack. So you can already tell why I'm so excited about being part of the Slack community and helping kind of spread the word. So if you have any questions after this event, happy to answer them. But let's get things going, and I will stop sharing my screen, and we will now introduce Greg. And so let me jump back to Greg. Let's make sure I got the big screen up here. We're gonna pin you, Greg, to the, let's see if this works. No, full screen. There we go. We're going to full screen you. If anyone else has questions, we'll be kind of hopping back and forth to be able to talk and answer ask questions to Greg. I will bring them up. I will ask them to Greg, and then he will answer said questions. All right. So let's kick things off. So, Greg, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. We're sorry that we couldn't grab you in person, but we'll have to get you here another day. So, obviously, my most important question to you is, what is your favorite Slack emoji and why?
I mean, the ones I use the most are normal ones: check mark, man bowing, eyes, thumbs up. But I would actually, my favorite one is also one I use a lot. Do you know the shrug emoji like this? I think might be like shrug. I don't know what it's called, but I have a custom one that's my face that someone built years ago. So it's Shrug Greg. So I use that a lot. Like, I don't know. So it's not one of the standard ones, but basically picture that one, but with my face on it, superimposed on it.
Shrug Greg.
Yeah.
Give us the context of when Shrug Greg is getting used.
Someone asks a question I don't know, dude. I'm like, I don't know. Instead of writing some long answer, I don't know.
Well, I love it. I mean, I feel like I need that. So if you could share that emoji after this call, that would be really helpful. So the next question now.
You have to put your own face on it, though. So
absolutely not.
I can share the
face anywhere I can. All right. So big question for you. You've been with the Slack team for a while now. How long have you been with the Slack team? Have you seen it change over the years?
Let's see. I've been 6 years, a little over 6 years. So, I mean, it's changed quite a lot. I didn't join when it was a small company. I think when I joined, there were, I mean, I want to say at least 1,500 people or so. But it was pre-IPO, so I saw it go from that to IPO, and then also the acquisition. So a lot of changes, a lot of growth. I mean, the product looks pretty different. If you've been using it for more than a few years, you probably agree with that. So yeah, so tons of changes. Yeah.
And tell us, so you're now the senior director of partner engineering, which is quite a mouthful for most of us.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is a senior director of partner engineering, and how does one invariably end up in this kind of role?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask most people at Slack, they'd be like, "Oh, what do you do?" So yeah, it's kind of random. But essentially, what we are is we're engineers and residents on product. So we live in the product team, and we work on all things ecosystem. So that means the Slack marketplace. It means security and compliance, like DLP and e-discovery. Generally, working with other software companies to building integrations to and from Slack. And we try to focus on, because we're on the product team, newer products we're building. So we'll embed ourselves with various products and engineering teams within Slack as we release features out to the ecosystem. And then we'll bring partners into that and have them launch applications.
And if you had to describe how your role has changed over the years, as you kind of started to move kind of up into bigger and bigger roles at Slack, what's been the thing that you found that's helped you the most as you've kind of excelled through that?
I mean, I don't know. I think generally the laid back communication style of Slack. I mean, that's probably a weird answer, but it's honestly true. So we set up basically shared channels with everyone. It's pretty laid back. It's quick. You don't have to write 45 minutes of emails that are indented. It just allows you to kind of focus on broader things while getting smaller things done quickly. I think I would just get caught up in all the day-to-day red tape and nonsense, and it would be impossible to kind of move up and be more strategic. So we're able to stay small that way, which is nice. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but I feel that's what I like the best. Yeah.
I think it's a great answer. I think you also brought up something that we probably should talk about, since partner engineering is so interesting, is Slack Connect, right? That product is so particularly built for partners. We're all wondering, because I'm sure who uses Slack Connect in the room? Okay, so we've got about half the hands up in the room. How many Slack Connect channels does your team have? Because I can only imagine how many that you're using on a regular basis.
I mean, we have hundreds for sure, maybe thousands, but the only thing I look at in Slack is what I have starred currently. So, I mean, everyone uses Slack differently, right? They have their own strategy. I don't necessarily leave channels. If someone wants to tag me, obviously I'll look at it. But otherwise, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. If something's starred, it means I'll actually proactively check that, even if I'm not. But yeah, we have, I mean, definitely hundreds, probably thousands. Yeah, I mean, without Slack Connect, our team would have to be 5 times the size, dealing with all the different partners. But I'm not in those every day. I mean, if someone tags me specifically, I'll go in there, or if I'm actively working on a project and I know there's day-to-day communications I want to send or read, I'll throw it into my starred. But otherwise, I'm there if you need me.
Cool. No, and I mean, I think you've already brought up some features that are really relevant, right? Just being able to star, create sections, Slack Connect. And then I'm actually going to take a quick pause, just because this is a fun little thing we're doing in the room. How's the sound? Is the sound good enough? Can you guys hear well enough in the room? All right, just want to make sure, because I'm sitting right here. So we're still doing good. And hopefully
I can hear you well, but I don't
you can hear me. There's a nice little Yeti mic sitting right next to me. So
nice.
Yeah, I know. We've got the whole setup here to try to make this work as best as humanly possible. All right, well, we're going to get into some fun stuff. We're going to move into the app marketplace, because Gregg is basically looking over the purview of how all these partners are working in the app marketplace. And we're all wondering, how does the app marketplace work? What do we have to think about if we're trying to build a Slack app? So I have, just to kind of lay the land, how long has the Slack app marketplace? Can you tell us a little bit about the history of it?
Good question. I think it launched in 2017. I could be wrong, but that's the date I have in my mind. So it's been around for a while. It's definitely grown over the years. I mean, like I alluded to before, Slack it has way more features than it used to have. So the marketplace originally, was more for bots and a couple messaging back and forth. As we've layered on more complexity and more objects, it has grown there. But just, I guess I don't know if everyone on the call or in that room actually builds on Slack, but there's different ways to actually build on Slack. We do have a run on Slack application where you can actually host your app on Slack and run it there. Then we have externally hosted applications, and there's really three types. The first type would be a custom application, something you build for your own workspace, something that's helping just your company, or you build it for a company. So that's the first type that we internally generally call custom. The second type would be distributed. So as you're thinking about installing that on external workspaces, so more than one company, you move into that category. So maybe it's you're building something and you have it installed on 3 or 4 other companies, as well as you're building your product, your business, or something for fun, whatever the use case is. And then lastly, once you have an application that's mature and you want to submit to the app directory or app marketplace, then that becomes a marketplace app. And I don't know if that was necessary background information, but that last piece was, then that last piece is the marketplace. So there are, hundreds of thousands of other applications out there. There's probably, I don't know, maybe we're in the millions now. I don't know. But the app marketplace is just a subset of that, of applications that you've matured and submitted to the marketplace, and you want to post it publicly for Slack.
No, and I mean, I'll do my best as so we build on Slack. So to explain kind of like what it feels like from the other side. So we started initially with just like an app that was not distributed. So you can actually build apps that don't distribute to like other teams. Like if you're not trying to sell your app, if you're just trying to build it for your own team or community or whatever you're trying to do, you can totally build an app that's just for your Slack workspace. And then when you're ready to put that app into multiple workspaces, that's when Gregg's talking about you create a distributed app, and you would actually distribute the app into multiple other workspaces. And then, correct me if I'm not, Gregg, in order to push your app into the app marketplace, you have to have at least 10 app distributions. Is that number still right? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to have 10 app distributions. So let's imagine you want to go and submit your app to the marketplace so that your app can actually be downloaded by others. In order to get to that point, you basically had to at least have 10. They don't need to be paying customers, but you need to have actually created an app that 10 other workspaces are using actively in order to actually submit it. So did I get that right? All right.
That was exactly, the exact right number.
We try to pay attention when you run your whole business on Slack. We do our best to know some of the things that we got to know.
There's a lot of important things around moving to the app directory and distributing your app. Things that can be somewhat complex. There's different edge cases. A lot of it's around authentication, user management, different team types. So we try to encourage installing on multiple teams to make sure that your app properly responds.
So that's a great lead in to there are several restrictions on the app marketplace. So what are the kinds of apps that you do not accept into the marketplace on your team?
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole list. I think our list, we have like a list of don'ts. If you look on api.slack.com, there's probably like 30 different things there. But I mean, generally, there's some obvious ones. If an app is dangerous, malicious, or is somewhat like inappropriate as well, we look at. So we don't allow that. We don't allow apps that don't have proper security guidelines. So if they don't have terms or privacy policies. You already mentioned one restriction. You haven't tried to install in other workspaces. We don't allow those types of apps. We try to catch apps that generally break Slack's trust. So if you look at an app that's going to like spy on users and I'm making this up, but if an app's going to spy on users, let you know who's online and who's offline and who's work, things like that just break that trust model. I know that's kind of broad, but those apps are something that we definitely would not want and not approve. What else generally? Oh, if applications don't necessarily have and this happens more and more than you think, don't actually work on Slack. So they're like, yeah, that works really well externally, and then and then there's no real Slack aspect to it. We're like, all right, well, this is a Slack marketplace. Like we don't, yeah. So and that's honestly more common than you think. So we shy away from those apps as well. And anything that, I guess it's kind of the same as my first example, dangerous, but any apps that don't respect ACL. So any apps that would potentially leak like DMs or private channels or don't respect data. So anything that would potentially break the trust model, we're very, 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 very cautious of.
So I guess a fun question. You've been doing this for 6 years. Could you give us some examples of like the funniest apps that you've had to turn down? Any come to mind?
Honestly, we don't like funny apps. We like generally like would get approved because funny apps generally.
Well, that's maybe like, that's the right question.
Ones that come in, like, this app's like, it's kind of fun. It's not dangerous. Like, this is great.
What's an app that we don't know about that we should know about?
I can't. I'm not going to call any. We've rejected. I probably couldn't even think of any like specific names. If we reject them, they don't really stay around long and like mentally. But I don't know. There's a lot of interesting ones out there. I remember when I first started at Slack, there was this app I still don't really get. Yo, remember Yo?
Yeah,
remember that?
I do remember Yo.
That was, but everyone that was like everyone's like fun app they use, and then I think I was just not in on the joke. But that was one that everyone used to talk about, and to this day I still don't even.
Was there a Yo Slack app? Actually, it's a good question because I can gauge this audience. Does anyone remember Yo, or do I need to explain Yo? Okay,
you need to explain it to me at least.
This
was like this inside joke.
It was an inside joke. At least I knew what it was. It was like so basic. So Yo was an app that truly would just send a notification to your friends. That was it. That's the extent of what I'm talking about. You could Yo, and anyone who was listening to you would get a Yo. And that app, I think that was like peak crazy software era. I think they raised like several millions of dollars after this person had just built this in like 8 hours. And that was basically the story. It was pre-AI too, right? So this is not like an AI app. This is truly basic notification. So was that?
So that's all it did. Like literally just said Yo back to you.
It wasn't, there was nothing it said. It was a notification that you just got Yo'd. And I can't.
Oh, I see.
I spent 3 minutes of this recording explaining Yo, but that's the era we live in. It's good to know the history of software applications. So
if I want to send you a Yo, do you get like a notification like, hey, Greg Yo'd you, or you got a Yo?
It is truly that simple.
Oh. All right. Well, that was one that I remember was like talked about quite a bit, and I never really understood it. But
I'm shocked that there was a Slack app that was built for Yo, but now I'm less shocked that, based on what I had to do to explain it. So, all right, let's move on because I can't do it.
All right, sorry, I'm killing this interview.
All right, my next question for you. This is a good one. So last week was TDX. We learned a lot about like what's going on with agents. Everybody who has like listened at all to any software business has heard the word agent probably at least 100 times. So Agentforce is this big new push from the Salesforce team. And I believe there's now, the Agent Exchange. So this is now a new marketplace for agents from the Salesforce team. Where do you see the Slack app marketplace tying in with the Agent Exchange? I will add just one note just so you can explain it better. Slack does support these agents. So there is an ability to actually add agents from Salesforce into Slack. You can also build your own third-party custom agents. So agents is a whole new UI for Slack, and that's another big expansive area. And so Greg is very much in charge of what does that look like from a distribution perspective. So, all right, now back to you, Greg. How are those two things going to come back together?
Yeah, you kind of said it. That's a glue. App Exchange and Marketplace are, if you look at it now, they're pretty dissimilar, right? There's not a ton of overlap. If you look at each one, you're not going to see a lot of cross-pollination, although you will see some. We've launched some in the past couple of quarters, so you'll see a little bit. But yeah, agents are the new thing that they're kind of tying that together. So, TLDR is a lot. You'll see a lot. you'll see a lot more. You'll be able to see agents on either platform. They'll be distinct. We're still figuring out like what that'll look like. But now that Agentforce is in Slack, there's just this natural loop. So anything that's employee facing can just be launched directly into Slack. It really brings together our ecosystems from the Salesforce ecosystem, the Slack ecosystem, in a ways which we just didn't have before. So you'll see a lot more. If you went to the marketplace right now on the landing page, you'll probably even see an Agentforce banner there. I believe it's still there. So we're doing things like that. And Slack very much will be a part of Agentforce Exchange or Agent Exchange.
Do you? So just so you, I worked at Salesforce for 7 years, so I have some understanding of like how the Salesforce data paradigm all works. But Greg, like, you know, the metadata behind it is all very different, right? Like to get an app into the app exchange, or now I guess it's the agent exchange, and to get an app into the app marketplace, those are very different applications. So do you see a world in the future where like a developer building around Slack and Salesforce could submit their application for both marketplaces together, or do you still see those being separate marketplaces in the future?
It's hard to say. I don't know. Honestly, we are working on if you're on one marketplace, you can be visible on the other one. Whether we can create one submission and have it go to both, and you get all rights and from that, I honestly don't know. We're linking a lot of the features on the back end, which you've seen. I think we announced some last week as well. So our goal is really, if you build something on Slack, you can extend that automatically into Salesforce and vice versa. You can kind of get the benefits of both platforms. Yeah, but will there ever be like this one submission rule? That I honestly don't know.
Yeah. No, and I think everybody's wondering, including the Salesforce side too, right? I think the hard part about Slack and Salesforce, which is rightfully so, they are completely different company like backgrounds, right? With decades of history of technology that can't just be put together in like one quick day. So I think we're all interested to see what's that next generation of both like CRM technology and productivity communication technology, and are those two things going to come together more meaningfully, especially with like as a partner developer. I see it very much on the customer side. That has started to happen substantially, but as a partner, it's very difficult because we have to think in kind of two different categories.
Yeah, we're really trying to focus on how you can leverage one investment across really all the sister companies, right? It's not just Salesforce and Slack as well. But it's architecturally it's interesting. So we'll hopefully more to come.
And I guess my final comment, going back to what you said before, the rules are different, right? Like that's actually also pretty interesting. The rules and how you're actually able to use Salesforce data versus how you're able to use Slack data. Those are very different rule sets. So I would be interested to learn and maybe you can just speculate, like, do you see a world where those rule sets will come together, or do you think they'll continue to be divergent as well?
If I had a crystal ball, I think, I would speculate. I think, I don't think I think they'll come together over time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Well, I think the next trick is like, I guess a good question. Cause again, sorry, everyone online. I wish I could have everyone raise their hands, but I'll have everyone raise their hands in here.
Isn't there like a hand raise feature?
There might be. That's a good
question. It says raise hand. I don't know.
Okay. So let's do a quick little raise hand, and I'll look back at the chat briefly, and then we can also ask some questions before I kind of have the last bit of questions. But I think the question I would have to everyone is who is, let's start with like, who has already built an app on Slack before? Okay, we've got 2 hands in person. We've got 2.5 hands. And I don't know if I can even see where the hand raising thing is in here, but it's fine. Okay, well, we've got 2.5. We'll imagine that we've got the same ratio again. So the question, Tom, was who has built a Slack app before? And maybe if you just post in the chat, if you have built one before, that might be helpful. building ours currently. We've got 2 in the room. Are
Nice.
they in the app marketplace or not yet? Okay, so we've got multiple apps that are being built, but none yet in the marketplace.
Awesome.
So that was kind of my next question, was how many people actually on this call have an app in the marketplace? That's my co-founder making a joke at me. We got Bilal, who has built one and put it in the marketplace. So it does seem like, there's a lot of people that are interested in, they've built apps. Smaller group has put them in the marketplace. My next question is kind of expanding out. Who is interested in building apps for Slack? Okay, I would assume the 2 that have already built it are also interested in building it as well. But that's a much bigger group, Greg. So we've got basically like 75% of the people in the room. I'm sure we have a lot more online. So I'm excited to see kind of the interest in Slack building. I'll say a personal note, which is pretty interesting. So I worked at Salesforce for 7 years, and I used to tell every B2B company, like, look, your first integration, it's going to be Salesforce. It was just like inevitability that, like, if you're going to build a B2B app, you build Salesforce. And I would say in the last 2 to 3 years, something changed. And now the first integration I see on every like B2B app is a Slack integration. It's probably the first thing that most teams build. It's even things that I have seen teams build, not just as like just a one-off integration. They actually use it as like enterprise grade tiering. They have different functionality even within their Slack app based on the tier that you're in. So I've seen it as this whole new like vehicle for growing your business, especially because we all, especially in this audience, in this community, all use Slack every day. So I'm excited, Greg, as an outsider, because I think that's a huge thing to see that the Slack marketplace is becoming the first marketplace for most B2B businesses that are getting started. So, all right, let me take 1 or 2 quick questions, and then we'll move on to like what it takes to build a Slack business. If there are any questions, let's see. Q&A, nothing yet in there. So let's check the chat. Oh, Mikkel, we'll take your question, or Michael. I'm aware of the AI Assistant API. Are these custom AI assistants integrated with the agents from Agentforce? And Greg, you want me to rephrase the question, or you got that?
No, I get it. No, they're not at this time.
Yes. So I have a slide that I've done in a previous presentation. There is Slack AI that Slack sells, right, Greg? So like there's a product that Slack sells called Slack AI. Then there is AI agents in Slack. And AI agents in Slack is actually the integrated system of bringing those all together. And then you can create an Agentforce app. So this is from Salesforce. You connect it to that same user experience layer, and now you can use AI agents in Slack with your Agentforce AI. So I know that's a lot of words, but if you have any questions, I'm also happy to answer it later. It is confusing, Greg, and I have told the marketing team how confusing that can get.
Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, I mean, Slack's it's an open platform. There's a lot of ways to integrate, and yeah, we'll figure out how to best get the message out there that's clear.
Yes. Okay. Let's ask our last section of questions, more on building a Slack business. And if you have questions for Greg, please go ahead and post them in either the chat, or you'll see at the bottom there's a Q&A. Oh, actually, I think I clicked start. There we go. So please feel free to ask it in the Q&A section. And I will come back to those after we first finish this section, and we will prioritize the in-person audience first and then move to the virtual audience. So, Greg, you're going to be full screen again, and we're going to close this out with Slack businesses. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to actually start a business with Slack?
I mean, I guess I mean, this is such an obvious thing to say, but find a niche. You know, if you happen to have expertise in a line of business, I mean, I feel like that's an underserved part of the marketplace. Really specific lines of business, I think, is interesting. As far as how to approach it, I would say don't boil the ocean. Slack is built to be quick, 0 to hello world. So start small, start testing, get user feedback. Don't try to come up with this giant I mean, you could. This is my personal advice. Don't try to come this giant plan, build 50 features maybe you're not need, then test it out. The platform was designed from like the bottom up to be able to develop quickly and to iterate and to experiment. So utilize that aspect. The barrier to entry is very low for building applications. So I would start there. And I think there's a few opportunities. I think another underserved area of Slack is services. As we layer on complexity, especially in the current world when things change every 2 weeks with like agents and assistants, right? Like businesses, they more need expertise in services. So I think there's a gap there. I think that's interesting. But just like, tactically, I would sign up for the developer program so you get a Slack sandbox, start building an app, test out some features, install on some teams, build out your assets. Once you start building in Slack, you'll see everything you need. There's a long list of the kind of assets you need to ultimately submit to the app directory, and just start jamming. We're definitely like a kind of radical immediacy type development shop versus the opposite. So I think if you go that route, that tends to be the path of least resistance.
And I think that aligns well. So just to give, I build an ISV app. So actually I'm building for a niche, the customer communities, and Sarah is a services business that helps teams actually set up. So if you have any questions to ask, like what that looks like and from the outside, we're happy to answer them. But definitely agree with Greg that that's the way to go, is go niche.
Yeah. I mean, you two would have way better advice than I would on right here. So
well, I mean, you've seen, way more apps than I've ever seen on the Slack side. I guess the what we're all wondering is like, what, if you're willing to share some of your ideas, like what would you say is like, if you were to go out, and I don't want to steal the one that's going to make you your millions of dollars, but if you were to go out and build your Slack app, like what would that look like? Give us like an actual example of like how we should be thinking about like a niche and how those problems can be solved in Slack in particular.
If I was gonna do it, I would probably sell services because
yeah.
I guess I think okay. I mean, one idea, like I think one area underserved specifically is kind of it's ironic because it's kind of the first area that when Slack launched this platform, how we got popular, which is kind of notifications and then led into approvals. With everyone is building towards this agentic future, and once one thing can actually automatically be done in the background, it's going to reverse and go back to that original. I just want to be notified when something happens. I want to say yes or no. I want to be aware. I think there's a giant opportunity there for whether it's middleware, whether it's a service, whether it's a standalone. But I think that'll become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's where I would probably put my money personally. I don't know if that's too specific or
no. That's actually very good. I can see the value, especially because like AI is so hard to track once you let it loose, right? It's just like how you make sure that the things that AI is about to do are actually the things that you want it to go and accomplish.
Second you move away from that assistant window, you're like, all right, then what? I have to go back and check. Yeah, there's this gap there. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so we now are going to move it into questions, which is my favorite time. So we're actually going to go and answer folks' questions. I see a few questions starting to trickle in online, but we're going to start with the folks in the room. I'm actually going to switch the camera, which is going to be fun. We're going to move it to all of you. So give me a second while I manage to do that. There we go. All right, great. So you can see it's a small little audience, but it's exciting to have everyone here. All right, I saw your hand go up. I'm not in camera. He's not in camera, but I'll do my best.
For a hot second.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Greg. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the services? Like, can you give a couple of examples of what that means?
Can you hear him, Greg? I just want to make sure.
I can.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't?
Like,
isn't Brid there? Hold on. Can Brid answer this question?
Yeah. Great.
I feel like you're way more suited to answer this question than me. Sorry, and you're sitting right there.
And let's Sarah, I might have you come up because otherwise I don't want people to be able to hear you otherwise.
is. So.
Oh, well, Scott. Sorry, I know a little bit about you.
No, that's fine.
Sorry, that's why I called you out.
And I'm thinking of where to start this conversation too, because when it comes to services, we're helping folks with design, but then also, of course, like the technical configuration and implementation. So getting hands-on and helping them actually build that application. So depending on what they're trying to do, whether it's, a custom Slack app or you're connecting multiple systems and integrating that into a process on Slack, or if you're starting to look at an AI agent where you're connecting, of course, like your LLM, looking into RAG and all that, then we are providing support across the board. And then when it comes to launching, like wherever the app is going or whoever it's serving, whether it's like change management support or thinking about like how your end users are going to interact with that app, we're helping with that process as well.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
Does that help or?
100%.
Yeah.
I will definitely ask you more specific questions
Okay.
that might not be relevant for a lot of people later, but I will definitely grill you later. But yes, thank you. That definitely summarizes it quite well.
All right. I'll take one more question in the room, and then we're going to move to the virtual. Could I have you come up even to the hot seat so everyone online can hear you?
There we go.
I love this format, right? It's kind of
No, it's like a town hall where you come up.
yeah, it's like musical
Walk up in the
chairs,
middle
we
of
got
the
virtual, we got everybody from coming in left and right. All
Really
right.
ask questions
If you-
in front of the class.
Yeah, what's your name, and we'll have you ask.
I'm
your question.
Shashank. My question was more about the do's and don'ts that you were mentioning, and the kind of app accepting and rejecting. What's the process? Like, let's say you get rejected. So how does that work? Is there a space to work with people at Slack to get it? Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, so we have so I mean, it's actually pretty rare that you submit the first time and it's like, oh my god, everything's perfect, yay, like let's publish. Yeah, so there's a back and forth. So we have a marketplace team that works with people like yourself, and you submit to give you feedback, let you know something needs to be changed, and then it can go back and forth once, twice, as many times as it needs to, or as long as it takes. Sometimes there's some major piece of feedback, sometimes it's incredibly minor. But yeah, there's a whole process and there's a system in place for that.
And that's usually a month, 6 months. What's the? Just trying to get a sense of how much back.
I mean, it depends on like what needs to be changed. Honestly, if it's like, hey, you need to put this line in your privacy policy that's listed as a requirement, someone puts in there, and it's 5 minutes.
Right.
It's like, hey, your auth doesn't work. You may need 6 months to go and build it. So there's really not. Unfortunately, there's not like a normal. And it also depends on the complexity of the app. If you're building something very simple and straightforward that just might send a notification in, or if you have interactivity and multiple systems involved, like complexity can be this big, or it can be enormous. Sorry, that's not a great answer, but yeah, there's really not a standard.
No, that's still helpful. Thank you.
All right, I see a question from Christine online. Is there a step in the partner pipeline that you find to be most critical?
I mean, in the partner pipeline specifically, like who Slack I would say, Slack invests in its newest features typically, right? That's where we're going to put our marketing around. That's where we're going to put our effort around. So I would say staying tight there is most critical, in hitting that inflection point when we're launching these new features, whether that's our AI assistants, whether that's Canvas, whether that's whatever is tomorrow. I found that that's what I'd say.
Cool. And I'm rolling over just so you can see the voice behind the wall. Yeah. And Christine, again, has another great question. The Slack marketplace has been around a while. Was there like a turning point that actually accelerated its growth?
Not in my opinion. It came out. I actually came out before I worked at Slack, so I can just. This was what I hear, but it came out pretty strong. But Slack, there's two ways in which we get apps into, well, three really, ways in which we get apps into the marketplace. Slack built a lot ourselves, so and we still own a lot of apps, and we'll build them today. And then we'll proactively go out and work with other software companies and get them to build on whether it's a new feature or new paradigm. And then lastly is organic growth. So there's really three methods. I can't say that there was a specific turning point because unfortunately I haven't worked at Slack long enough to have the full history there.
And yeah, just so people know, Slack is old with quotation marks. 2014, right, Greg, is basically when Slack really got going.
I think so. I think we call ourselves 11 years old, 12 years old, I believe. We're definitely over 10 because I think I have a 10-year thing around here somewhere. So I think we're 11 or 12, we say officially.
So I just saw a question come in, and I'll see if I can read it real quick. This might be a little technical. OAuth token. It might, RV, this might be a little too technical and specific. But yeah, happy to. So one call out, this is actually a good call out, is if you have questions like this. Remember that slide I showed you in the beginning about that big Slack workspace? Phenomenal place to be able to ask questions, connect with the DevRel team, so the developer relations team, who are really knowledgeable on Slack, as well as like many other Slack partners and developers who also hop in and answer those questions. So if you do have like hard technical questions, definitely go into the workspace and ask those under Slack developers. You also will find opportunities, and this is really interesting as well. If you want to join certain pilot programs, it's a great way to get access to pilot programs because that's actually where those pilots are posted. So the Slack community is where basically the whole Slack team will go in order to find, kind of the devs that are most interested in it. So yes. All right. Any other questions in the room? Because I have no more questions online. So Greg, I'm going to slide right over here so you can see me. I just want to say thank you for taking the time with us today. This was a really good session. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it, both online and in person. And of course, we'd love to host you one day when the stars align in person here in New York again. So I just want to say thank you again, Greg.
Next week, but it didn't.
I know, right?
Sorry for not. Yeah, the schedules didn't work out, but thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Yes. And I will make one other call out. In about 2 weeks, if you we are having another event in this location, Women in Slack. I don't know if Sarah, if you want me to do a quick little thing on it, if you got it. Okay, so we're going to have an event. We're bringing in 5 women from Slack, leaders within the Slack ecosystem, mostly here in New York. We're going to interview them about their history coming into Slack and what it means for them. So it's exciting for Women's History Month. Please be sure to check that out. And then I just got news that in May, it will be the next Agentforce World Tour. So if you're interested in learning the latest and greatest about that, I don't know if, Greg, you're coming in for that one in New York, but we'll have
I'll be there.
Yes, you'll be able to meet Greg in person. It's a free event. Most people don't know that.
Yeah,
It's a free event. Definitely go check it out. You'll learn a lot. It's one whole day, and you get to experience all of what like Slack and Salesforce are building in the enterprise AI space. So very cool. Any other call outs? I think that should cover it. Anyway, Greg, thank you again. I'll let you run. Appreciate you taking the time.
You too. Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.
All right. See everyone online. Appreciate it so much. Stop the record.